Now, I wanted to start today with a study that undermines all the talk that racism is just rampant across the United Kingdom. A new report claims that we live in one of the least racist countries in the world. A survey of 24 top nations found that just 2% of Brits, just 2%, wouldn't want to have someone of a different race as their neighbour. And when it comes to living alongside an immigrant or foreign worker, the figure is only 5%. Now, in both categories, the UK is less racist than the United States, France, Italy, frankly, loads of countries, actually. I'm joined now by the actor and writer Femi Nylander to discuss all of this. Femi, look, thank you very much for joining me. I've got to be honest, this goes a long way to undermining, frankly, what the UN said, that Britain is a long way from being a racially just society, that ethnic minorities are living in fear of systemic racism.
Well, Patrick, do you know anything about cognitive psychology and reporting bias? It's a concept, basically, which says that when survey respondents are responding to a survey, they'll often have bias. And when you want to find something out, if you ask a question of the person who is supposedly the perpetrator of the wrong, they're not going to, no one is answering a survey going, I am a racist. You had me on a few weeks ago, and that was a survey, to talk about a different survey, and that was a survey where minorities were talking about their experiences.
Would the same not apply for
and that
them,
had a very...
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? So by that logic,
result.
would the same not apply for them? Because they would maybe be more inclined to say that they are suffering.
Well, that's no, but possibly.
Right.
You have some, but I mean, at the end of the day, if I ask someone how tall are you on a survey, if someone's 5'9", they'll probably bump it up to 6 foot or to at least 5'10".
To be fair, Femi, is it? I mean,
the survey is a survey which asks British people if they feel like they're racist.
But surely there would be the same level of cognitive bias, right, in places like Iran, Russia, Japan, China, Greece, Morocco, South Korea, Egypt, Poland, Italy, the Philippines, Indonesia, Mexico, Spain, Nigeria, France, Austria, Australia, Canada, United States and Norway, all countries who scored higher than us. So do they not care about not seeming like racists, but we do, and we're the only ones who are trying to cover up our racism?
No, I don't think that's necessarily true. And I think that some of the countries you named, they do have big problems with xenophobia. No one said England is the only country in the world that has problems with xenophobia. Japan famously has had a lot of problems in the past with xenophobia and with seeing as itself as superior to the Koreans, to the Chinese, its immediate neighbours. So no one is saying England is the only country with xenophobia. No one is saying that some of the other countries don't deserve to be on the list. All I'm saying is that to say that the UK isn't racist because British people have said that they are not racist, and not to look at the evidence, not to look at some of the rhetoric which came out around Brexit, not to look at any of the institutional aspects which show that in the UK, people of minorities are disproportionately likely to be poor, disproportionately likely to be in the criminal justice system, disproportionately likely to be entitled to free school meals, disproportionately likely to be the victims of aggravated racially motivated crime. I mean, the evidence of Britain being a society which has serious problems with institutional racism are all there. And this is a survey which has asked British people, are you racist? And no one, I mean, you can't draw conclusions by saying, do you...
Well,
like,
to be fair, Femi, I have got to put it to you.
I'm not.
What you are doing here is just picking and choosing your evidence to suit your argument, no? That Britain is a racist.
Isn't that the same thing you're doing when you?
Well, no, I didn't do this study. This is evidence. This is the study from the Policy Institute at King's College London. I mean, King's College London will do loads of studies.
King's College London is a British.
But if they put out a study, or something on, for example, the economy or the way that people feel on that, presumably you'd be inclined to believe that. Or why is it that when it comes to things like race, that people don't want to accept the findings?
Not necessarily. I don't necessarily trust that a study is correct because it comes out of a Russell Group UK university. Because one, I mean, all these Russell Group lists, I went to Oxford myself, right? They always put Oxford as the best university in the world, but it's always the British newspapers and the British lists that do it. It's of course a British newspaper and a British list is going to put a British institution as the best in the world. The US ones, they'll put Harvard. People tend to, institutions within countries tend to support their countries. And if a UK university comes out with a report saying that the UK is one of the less least racist country in the world. I'm actually less inclined to believe it.
What would you believe? So this is the issue, though, isn't it? Because what would you believe? It does sound to me, Femi, as though you're a bit disappointed that a study has shown that Britain is amongst the least racist countries.
I have nothing wrong with this study. A study is they've asked the questions. The study. I'm talking about what I know. I'm talking about the facts and figures in the UK. I'm talking about the fact that in the UK, black people are 7 times more likely to be in prison. I'm talking about the fact that in the UK, I have personal friends who have been beaten up because of their race. I'm talking about the fact that in the UK, I watch GBNews all the time, and I see you talking about migrants. I see you talking about people who you don't want to come in, floods of people coming to these shores, etc., etc. I'm talking about what I know, having lived here for 28 years and been born here and grown up here and studied the actual facts and figures about racism in the UK versus a survey which basically asks people, are you racist? It doesn't ask anyone, have you experienced racism?
It asks you, it doesn't, I mean, it goes well, to be clear on it, I mean, if we are doing the facts, it doesn't ask people whether or not they're racist. It asks people who they would be comfortable living next door to, which is a pretty strong indication, for example, of racism. And the survey will have been conducted anonymously, so anyone could have answered in any way that they would like. So, I mean, it's done in exactly the same way as you would conduct a survey on voting intention or anything along those lines. And so I do just wonder whether or not we're veering into the territory here of discounting something.
I wasn't there. I don't know if the survey was conducted properly. I don't know if there was bias in the report.
But what you do know is that it's deeply flawed and that it's not accurate.
Did so in a way. Let me just finish. I don't know if the people asking the questions did so in a leading way or if there was any bias in taking the survey. I'm just saying that what the survey finds. You opened the call and you said this goes against what the narrative is. And I'm saying that a survey which asks people, do you feel like you're racist or do you feel like...
It doesn't ask them that, though.
The evidence that British people don't want to live next door to Polish people and ethnic minorities is that en masse they voted to leave the EU largely because of the fact that they said, and they're documented...
But that was, and everyone would have known, would have led to more immigration from the subcontinent and Africa. So anyone who really voted to leave the European Union because they thought that it would lead to lower ethnic minority was seriously misguided.
That's not what I'm saying. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm just saying that we know a lot of people voted to leave the European Union because they didn't want Polish people around and they don't want Africans around. And a lot of people think that we should be sending asylum seekers off to Rwanda because they don't want to welcome people into this country.
But again, it's if you really ask people,
these are the facts. And
but they're not, though, are they? Because if you really ask people, it's about illegal economic migrants. It's not just about people that they don't like the colour of or they don't like their religion. And again, this is another thing in this. It also asks them about.
Migrants aren't the same thing.
It also asks them about. Well, you see, this is
talking about international law here.
Right,
okay, international law. We're talking about international law and the idea that when someone arrives at your country, they're supposed to be basically granted at least a chance of claiming asylum. If not, they're processed, they're sent home. And we're talking about international law. No other country in the world, by the way, so saying the UK is one of the least racist countries in the world, or no other country at the moment that I know has a policy of sending asylum seekers off to the other side of the world to a country with a questionable human rights record because they don't want to have to process their claims.
It's interesting you should say that, actually, because the European Union are desperately trying to do something very, very similar and indeed have actually created outposts in Turkey. So that, again, unfortunately for me, is not accurate. So, you know, there is that gaping flaw in there again. So just to round this off, you do not accept that Britain is one of the least racist countries in the world. You just don't accept that?
I don't accept that Britain is one of the least racist countries in the world. I don't think it's the most racist country in the world. I didn't ever say that some of the people on this list, some of the countries on this list, the United States, as I say, has serious problems with xenophobia. Japan has serious problems with xenophobia. The UK has serious problems with xenophobia. All I've said is that this survey, which goes to people and says, do you feel like you are racist, is not as clear evidence as...
But again, for me, it doesn't say that, does it? And this is the thing.
The survey that you invited me in to discuss the other day, it was a few weeks ago, that was a survey which asked minorities, do you feel Have you had experiences of racial aggravation? Have you that had a completely different? It had a completely
it did, but unfortunately, where I can't help but feel as though it falls down, and I appreciate this discussion, Femi, I really do. Is if you're using the logic that people have entered into this with bias and maybe are looking to get some form of answer out of it, then the same thing has to apply to that, doesn't it?
That's the problem with surveys. That's the problem with what's called qualitative data collection. It's qualitative research. You have quantitative research. You have qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative is like in-depth interviews, focus groups. Qualitative research is just a yes, no, A, B, C, D, and you can ask leading questions, you can have bias, and it doesn't always come up with results that are trustable. And at the end of the day, both of these reports have come up with very different results, and at the end of the day, we don't know if either of them are trustworthy. All I can talk about is what I know. Is
your own lived experience, and I understand that, and I respect it. Femi,
I'm aware of hard facts and figures. It's a hard fact that 7% that black people are overrepresented in the prison system.
Femi, I get that. We are going to have to move on, Femi. I'm afraid. All right, okay. Femi, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, I'll chat to you again soon. No doubt.